Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Renaissance Center chat. We are happy to have you this evening. And as we often gather together to share different topics and highlight different themes, and our theme for this evening is Align. For those of you who follow Morning Star Baptist Church, our theme for Women's Month is Align from Matthew 6:10. And so it's Women's History Month, it's Women's Month. So we are going to further that discussion with three of our members from MSBC who have um, found a way to align themselves with what they feel God has purposed them to do. And many of you out there are wondering, especially if you're in a season of transition, how can you follow where God is leading, especially in times of transition. And hopefully, the dialogue for this evening will be able to give you some tips, some ideas about how to get that done. So, we welcome our special guests into our chat room this evening. And as we would go around the room, but again, feel free throughout this time to put your questions in the chat on YouTube, on Facebook, and we are so grateful to have you join us again this evening with the theme Align, and we can all learn from our guests how to keep your journey moving forward, even in the midst of change and transition. So I'd like Anna, Alexandria, and Angel to introduce themselves.
Well, good evening, everyone. I am Anna Gray. I am one of the associate ministers and elder at the Morning Star Baptist Church. I have been a member of Morning Star for 25 years. In the secular world, my day job, I am a registered nurse by profession, and I serve as the Vice President of Population Health, Quality, Risk Management, and Patient Safety at Total Health Care. Total Health Care, we are a federally qualified health center, meaning we serve the underserved, and most of them look like us. We serve about 30,000 patients per year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So good evening, everybody. My name is Alexandria, but most of the people on this call me Allie. That is what I've been called since I was a little girl, since I first joined Morning Star when I was about 7. So that was about 21 years ago. And outside of church, I am proud to be a child of this ministry. I've gotten scholarships to go to college. I was in DOI, so I've done all of the things that people say a church kid should do. And now, outside of church, I work professionally at Baltimore City Department of Public Works as a project manager there. But in addition to that, I am a political and strategic communications consultant that helps small businesses and political candidates maintain their authentic brands. And I'm really excited about that work, specifically in a time where integrity is so important.
Great.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Debnam, for this opportunity. My name is Angel White Bryant. I've been a member of Morning Star Baptist Church since 2013, so a little over a decade. I'm a preacher's kid, so grew up in church all my life. Professionally, I do a lot of work with youth and families. I had an emphasis on youth, but more recently, I'm moving to the whole family. So I currently work at the State's Attorney's Office as the director of Older and Disabled Persons Unit, where we help victims of crime over the age of 60 get through whatever crimes they have become victimized of.
Those are great. And we hear viewers the wide variety of expertise that our guests have this evening. And so that shows you that there is nothing off limits. When we're thinking about how the trajectory of our lives can change in a moment, they're showing each of us that anything is possible, and you can really do a lot of different kinds of work and still be effective without it seeming like, in this day of social media, which is nothing wrong with that, everybody's work isn't going to be applauded or seen, but the people they impact is what is like Allie said, is important. The impact made in the community. So from there, I'm going to start with Angel, then Allie, and then Anna, and we're going to share. They're going to share. Each of them is going to share their story about how they are integrating their faith, their walk, their career path, any challenges that they may have had along the way. So it's your turn to share your testimony. We're going to call it that, your story.
Sure. So as stated, I'm a preacher's kid. I grew up CME, so I've been in church all my life. But it wasn't until I got into college where I actually started trying to explore what it was like to have a relationship with God. I had the privilege of going to college with one of my best friends from high school, and she grew up in the church as well. And during that time, it was very important for us to maintain the principles that we were taught, but also, just try to get to know God for ourselves. And so we were able to become friends with other like-minded people. We led the the college choir and things of that nature. We rooted ourselves into church. And so in college is where I started developing the relationship. But after college is when I actually started growing my faith. It's easy to, trust God when you don't have as many responsibilities. But once you become an adult, that's when the faith part really kicks in. And so I never left church. I always found a church to serve in. But that faith journey, it really was. It felt like more of an emotional roller coaster. I think my biggest issue growing up was, how do I hear from God? I'm making these decisions that I think is right, but how do I know that this is God versus me? And in some entities in life, I feel like that question still prevails. But what I learned along the years is to root myself in Scripture and wise counsel. And so, having a relationship with your pastor and other clergy members that have lived the life, that you're still walking the path of, just trusting that wise counsel, talking to God, prayer, and rooting yourself in a solid community. I think that's what helped me, even professionally. If you're rooted in your faith, it shows. And so the more it shows, the more other Christians in your community start to kind of gravitate. So I think the general thing for me was, staying true to my core, and growing that network that was going to help me continue to nurture myself.
Thanks. I like that, your community and being yourself. Being yourself really matters, and that's just something I applaud. You were able to be yourself as you developed and as you continue to develop. Allie?
One of the things that I learned as a young child um, was that prayer didn't have to be so formal. Like you didn't like as a kid when you teach the routine of prayer, you get on your knees and you put your hands together and you pray and you talk to God. And I learned that um, you could just talk to God. You could just talk to God. And I just started talking to God all the time about everything. And people laugh at me. I talk to God about which way I'm going to turn, even though I know where I'm going, which way I'm going to turn. People laugh, you always have good parking. That's because I've already talking to God about it. You know what I mean? So it's like even simple things that may seem mundane. Um, I've always been taught to talk to God. When I got baptized at a very, very young age, and I'm talking like 4. And I was at my previous church, and we went to, my mom took me to the altar with her for prayer. And they said, if you want to give your life to Christ, stay at the altar. And my mother took my hand to go back. I said, no, mommy, I want to stay. I want to give my life to Christ. And I'm like 4. And she's like, okay. And at the time, I was baptized by my godparents. And I've always just been taught that, God is always here for you. God is a provider, just listen. And in that, I've always been obedient. To me, alignment and obedient mean the same thing. And I've just always been obedient, both to God and to my mom and to whatnot. I haven't always been, doing all the right things, but in big things, I've tried to listen to God and listen to my village, to people who care about me and know God. And that didn't fail me. It took me all the way to McDaniel, and I stood on the middle of the campus after the tour. He was like, oh, you should go to a HBCU. You should do this. You should do that. And it's all of these voices clouding your head about decisions that you're supposed to make. And I stood in what we call Red Square. And I said, I'm going to McDaniel. That's it. This is where I'm supposed to be. God has spoke to me. I'm here. I'm done. I sent my deposit off. I came home from the post office. I took my little picture, like, yay, I decided where I'm going. Got home, got into Spelman. I was like, whoa, wait, did I make the wrong decision? Did I do the wrong thing? Everybody's like, well, no, you got into Spelman. You could do this. I said, nope. God already told me where I was supposed to go. And then today I just found out, confirmed that I won Young Alum of the Year. So it's like, even in those moments, things where people tell you what you're supposed to do, it's important to trust God. And sometimes God talks through you through your gut. God talks through you through music. God talks through me through people. But it's important for me to always be still and quiet, because if you're not, then you don't necessarily hear that little peak of God talking through other people. And one of the things that just has always helped me was a spirit of curiosity about God. And again, like Angel said, in building your relationship with God, knowing that it's yours, right? Growing up, I had the prayers of my grandmother. I had the prayers of my mama. I had the prayers of Lady Carla, Elder Anna, everybody, they knew me. They're like, Ellie, you're going to make it. But in college, you get there and you got to pray to God for yourself. And you have to manage that relationship for yourself. And at McDaniel, I studied religious studies at McDaniel. That's something people don't know. But there, our religious studies wasn't necessarily like a theology based study. It was more of like questioning religion. Why does religion exist? And all studying all types of religion. And it was in that process where I had a lot of questions come up against my faith, come up against everything I've known my entire life. And I've always encouraged people that don't be afraid to question God. Don't be afraid to ask those questions, because that's the only way you get to test your faith and figure out what you know and feel for yourself. And so through studying religious studies and learning about other religions, I was able to strengthen my faith in God. And I would say that built the foundation for my life as people see it and celebrate it today.
That's great, Allie, and congratulations, Young Alum of the Year. That's awesome. And it's not that we do it for that, but it's good when people see your commitment, your work, all the effort you put in to be a good citizen, in the community and on campus and within your church and family. So congratulations. So Anna.
Okay. So Anna's story is much different. Much like Angel, I'm a PK. My father was a pastor. So I was born and raised in the church. When my father started pastoring, the church. I was 6 months old. And so lived and breathed church, was there all the time. And said as a teenager, when I get old enough, I ain't going back to church. I'm not going to church. and I did just that. I left church for years, and liked to party and went out in the world. And in my 20s, returned. And that's when I really started to know who God was. And through my life and experiences, I can truly say my faith is what it is today because I know God will rescue you and he will restore you. And after going back to my home church, I remember it was in 1999. My husband and I both felt the need to go somewhere else. And visited Morning Star, and I'm not going to go into the long story because Morning Star is not where we were going to join. We had said, "Oh, we're going to join New Psalmist," and came to Morning Star, and the Lord said something different, and we joined in January of 2000, and that's where a lot of, or most of my growth came from, discipleship classes, and then facilitating classes and Bible study. And I started to grow in faith. And Lord and behold, the Lord did something I never thought he would do because I despised preaching and all of that growing up in that. He called me to preach. And no one could have ever told me that he would do that. But as crazy as my journey was, I wouldn't trade it for anything because it has made me the person who I am. Much different from my siblings. They all went to college straight from high school. I went to college as an adult, working full time, and then working part-time. And then at one point I stopped working so I could finish nursing school. My husband told me to stop working. And so I was an adult learner. And so, I am a testament of you can do it. You can do it working. You can do it at any age. You just have to make up your mind and do it and have faith in God.
Thank you. That's awesome. So everybody's story is different. And that's basically what we want to say. You cannot copy somebody else's journey in order to be who God wants you to be or to be in alignment, to be successful. And I know we have a lot of box checkers out there. You can't check all the boxes. The boxes is not, that's not going to get you where you need to be. And we heard from our guests that hearing from God, growing in God, helped them to make choices along the way. Perfection, no, nobody's perfect, but everything works together so that they could be able to be here tonight to encourage those of you who are on the journey. All of us are still on the journey. As long as we're here, we can grow and learn. Remember, viewers, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat. Tonight, we're talking about align, how to position yourself to be in God's will, but also how sometimes when you're not in God's will, God works it all for your good. So, nevertheless, not our will, but His will be done. And that's what alignment is about. It's about being in God's will. Also, we have a few more questions. So we thank you ladies for sharing your initial journey. But I would like each of you to define, and we talked a little bit about this, but what alignment means to you. And we heard one definition of alignment from Allie. So Anna, can you start? Then Angel, and then Allie to close us out.
Um, I believe alignment is being in agreement, and being in harmony, with God and really with your core values. And when all of that comes together, you are in alignment with God.
So I believe alignment is like a cluster of things, and I'll be brief with it. But the first part is it's maintaining a balance between humility and godly confidence. And so when I say that, imagine watching those TV shows where you have the earth, right? And the camera is zooming all the way from the planet all the way down to like a community or a person. And it makes me feel like, we're but a speck in society. However, God has still called us by name to be a part of his big plan. And so we can maintain that balance between I'm nothing, yet God has chosen me to do a greater work. I feel like that helps us to align. Also similar to what Allie and Elder Grace said, with disobedience and being in harmony, I also think alignment is the desire to be where God wants you to be, despite how it may object to what your plans are for your life. I'm a planner. I'm not like a box checker, Dr. Debnam, but I am a planner. I could tell you what I want my life to look like a year from now, right? But there are going to be times when, that plan has to come into submission to God's will. And so understanding, back to my first point, that, it's not about me all the time. It's not about me most of the time. It's about what God wants. And then also what you said, Dr. Debnam, about it being a journey. Who we are today is not who we were 5 years ago or 5 months in the future. But if we can just, uh, use that concept to just continue to just stay on the path that God has called us to. And, every journey needs a survival kit. So for me, it would be prayer, scripture, and that community that I was talking about earlier. I think like that's the cluster of what alignment is to me.
That's great. That's really good. Really breaks it down for people to take different parts of that or the whole uh, conversation, the whole definition, and see themselves in it. So that's good, Allie.
The only thing that I would add to that, and Angel reminded me of like a very specific like moment, is that obedience also means surrender, and that can be hard, right? It's like, hey, I got a good thing going here. What do you mean I'm supposed to be doing something completely different? This is nuts. And I think that in moments where you you have to surrender to alignment, um you feel better. And I think that that's the one thing people don't, because like the opposite of alignment is tension. It's misalignment, right? And so people, the tension you feel, the heartache you feel, the ickiness that you feel is sometimes coming from not surrendering. It's the tension of just trying to hold on to whatever you want to have. And sometimes, most times, I've learned in releasing that God has better. And I just hope that that encourages somebody, because alignment doesn't always mean just giving up what you want. It's just wanting what God wants and being okay with that blessing. Um, and that's a huge part of it.
I like how you put that, Allie, because I would say that's where I am now. Like what? like I'm good over here. That's what I like to say. Don't mess with me, God. I'm okay. I'm at this point in life, and it's just proof that it doesn't matter what point you are in life. Things can change. Look at Moses. He was 80 doing his thing on the back, side of the mountain with the sheep, and it was called to lead the country, his people. But you could be Rahab, right? Living your best life, and the spies come and say, "We need to stay here, and if you hide us, we'll save your family." And she had to make a change immediately. And that surrender piece is, I think, the most difficult part of alignment, because we already got it planned. Even if you're not a box checker or a planner, in our heads, the rest of us are like, we're doing this, we're doing that. We're, may not have a vision board or a chart or any of those types of things done, but we're going somewhere. And so this is really helpful for those who feel like, well, I'm stuck. Well, the stuck part is you're stuck in the surrender stage, because once you give that up, it'll be like Allie said, it'll be you and God. But we get stuck because we want it to be our way. And that's me. That's me right now. So um, for your purpose to manifest, we love talking about purpose, and people love trying to find their purpose. But what process, did you go through? And we heard a little bit of adversity that you all may have encountered along the way. But is it something in particular that really shifted your decision making from then on? So sometimes, give you an example. Some people, after a bankruptcy, they like, okay, after something that's really, changes what they felt was something very impactful for their life, they might say, okay, I don't want to go there again. I need to do some things differently. So has there ever been anything that you've experienced that, shifted your perspective on being in alignment? And we'll step with Anna, Allie, and then Angel.
I'm gonna I was thinking about that question. I'm going to start with the subject a lot of us don't like to talk about, which shifted my alignment with giving and tithing. As I said earlier, I was raised in the church. I was taught to tithe as a child. If you had $1, you gave 10 cents, whatever your allowance was. So I knew what tithing was. But when you get out on your own and you start having to pay those bills, and you're looking at BGE and rent and mortgage, and you have more month than money, you don't always do the right thing. And I can personally say that I did not always do the right thing. The bills won early on in my life. But what helped shift me was, even though the bills won, it still wasn't enough. And so I had to get to the point to even seek God in my finances and in my decision making, because if it wasn't the bills, it was, I used to love to shop. I still like to shop, but I don't shop the way I used to shop. But so it was just never enough. And so one of the things that I had to do was shift my thinking as it relates to finances. And I remember taking a financial stewardship class at Morning Star and learning really that all that I have belongs to Him, and how to allow God to take control of even your finances, because most of us don't want anybody else to take control of that. And so that was a shift. Another shift, and I still have to be honest, struggle with this sometime, is time. I like to have this balanced life, and I remember a former preacher at Morning Star said, "There's no balance. There's really no balance, and you're not going to find balance." But really learning that if you put God first, even with your time, somehow it manages to all work out. And so I had to struggle through that aspect. And still, again, that's probably one of my struggles. Like, I'm not going to have time to do this, even if it's just coming home, sitting on the couch, so I don't want to go to this, or I don't want to do that. But being in alignment with God and knowing where you're supposed to be and that you're doing what He has called you to do, He will make up the difference.
Thank you. That finances is a touchy subject, so I'm glad you brought it up. But that's a one of those spaces where we're struggling and can be stuck, and the surrender process can be a lot. For those of you in the viewing audience, don't forget to put your questions or comments in the chat. And we'll get to the one comment after I hear from Allie and Angel.
So, Dr. Debnam, tithing is actually where I was going to land too. So, me and Elder Gray must have been on the same page, but I kind of have like a quick testimony. Even though I grew up in church and everything, when I got my first job after college, tithing was a major issue for me. And I actually was inspired to tithe through my brother. He was a musician in Pittsburgh too. He went to college up there. But he had this like miracle moment. He said he was broke, and God talked to him during a service that he was attending, and he gave his last $50. That's all he had to his name. He gave it, and after service, he got hungry. He had a coupon for a hot dog at like 7-Eleven. So he's standing in line at the 7-Eleven, and he was the third person in line. And what he said was, the guy that was at the register said, "Hey, you dropped a 40. You dropped your money." And he picked it up. It was $40. And so he went to say thank you. And he asked the lady in front of him, like, "What happened to the man?" And they're like, "What man? Like, what are you talking about?" So he was under the impression that, and this is his truth, he was under the impression that an angel met him there to like show him that God will restore, if you give to me, I'm going to restore, what you felt like you had to give up. And so to me, I was like, oh, okay, cool. I want my magical moment too. But I had to learn that God is not a genie. He's God, right? And so even then, I wasn't ready to tithe just yet. And I remember meeting with my pastor at that time in Pittsburgh. And I said, "Look, I'm on the choir, I'm ushering, I'm coming to Bible study, I'm teaching children's church. I'm tithing in time." And he's like, "That's not how it works. It doesn't work like that. Where's your faith?" And I honestly don't remember when I started tithing, but the one thing I know is that I never looked back. And so actually Bishop Debnam challenged us a couple years ago. He said, "You don't have to wait till Sunday to give your tithe. When you get paid on Friday, go ahead and give it." And I just never looked back. And I can say, every day I'm not financially full all the days of my life, but I had nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose in continuing to tithe, and it just hasn't done me any wrong. And so I just have no reason to turn back from that. So that's the adversity that I feel like I overcame.
That's good. Allie?
One of the things that I thought about in preparation for this question was just really like my career journey. And part of it is like, I went to school for politics. I went to school for political management campaigns. And I don't do that every day, right? But how did I end up at DPW? And I look back over my life a lot of times in worship and prayer, and I think about specific milestones or people that my today is connected to. And one of them is a really good friend of mine, Aaron, that I did NLC with. NLC is called New Leaders Council. It's a organization that is cohort based that helps build progressive leaders on their entrepreneurship journey. And I did NLC in 2020. We started in January in person, and by March, as everybody knows, due to the pandemic, we were virtual. But our March session, our very last session, we had dinner at this restaurant. And when we got the email for the restaurant, I was so confused. I'm like, I've been here before. I know this restaurant. I know it, but I just can't place it. And the day of, as I was walking to the restaurant, I realized that it was the last place that I have a picture with my grandmother. I went there after my graduation from GW. And we went there and I said, damn, you done it again. And whenever I see or feel my grandmother, I feel like something's happening. Something's happening. And so I said, okay, so this NLC thing that I was a little shaky about might be all right. So I did that. And from that, I met my good friend Aaron Moore. In 2020, I opened my consulting business, and that flourished. Aaron got me my first client. And that was amazing. I was able to do some really cool work with the Ship Caulkers house here in Baltimore, the first Black African-American ship caulkers who worked in Fells Point. So that was a real cool Baltimore story that I got to tell and be a part of. I absolutely loved that. And then I started working and doing a whole bunch of other stuff just to make money. And then I got my good government job, y'all. I did it. I made it. I got my good government job. I was working at the mayor's office. And I said, wow, these people here are smart. I'm working on a really cool team and I'm doing it. And then Aaron brought me in to say, hey, we're trying to rebrand DPW. I would love for you to just come and talk to them. Come talk to our ELT and see what happens. And so I did a whole bunch of pro bono work just on behalf of being a good citizen, being my friend as a communications person. Citywide, we help other city agencies. That's what we do, right? That's what I do. It was nothing. And the chief of staff came to me of DPW. Her name is Audrey. And she said, Audrey Victoria. And she said, do you like your job? I said, yeah, I like my job. What you mean? I'm making my good government job. I got my money. I'm having fun. I'm doing good things. I work for the mayor. I don't want to leave that to come work at DPW. That was crazy. And I'm telling you, every sermon Bishop preached was about me taking that job. Every song that came, I mean, it was almost as everything, every sign, everything was about me taking that job. And I will say, choosing to surrender and go to DPW was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. In my first year of working at DPW, I won Employee of the Year for rebranding the agency. And it was amazing. People were confused. How did this girl only been working here for a year? How is she Employee of the Year? Against people who have been working. Our oldest employee has been working for DPW for over 70 years. And I've just been so blessed to be in other meetings where other people have seen what our rebrand has been. Like, oh yeah, I love that best in class. Y'all look good. This is doing well. We are doing this. And to hear how people inside, most importantly, inside of the agency felt as a result of the work that we were doing, it changed my life. To hear people feeling valued and appreciated, to feel seen for doing some of the most unappreciated work. Literally, if you brush your teeth today, if you took a shower today, if you put your trash out, that the most unappreciated work, making those people feel important, seen, and valued and loved, was so much fun, revolutionary, and has changed the trajectory of how other city agencies are doing government and communications. It has been cool and fun. And for that, I'm forever grateful, with the opportunity to serve, and to serve both at church and AKA and whatever, but also like through my day to day job. I am a public servant. I am on the battlefield for the Lord every single day. And I just love that I get to do that through my work.
That's great. That's a great testimony, and how your grandmother has been there throughout that journey. And it's those people who have gone on before us that really planted a seed that, now we're growing from that, growing from those uh, spiritual experiences, our spiritual growth, seeing other people traverse adversity and how they made it through. And I can relate to giving up your job uh, that you loved, or you thought you loved, for another job that God wants you to do. And so sometimes you go from good to good. It's not always, something bad happening that sends you into a transition, or makes you go into an alignment season with God where you're on the same page. A lot of times it's again good to good, or good to great or better, and God positions us. So, few other questions and comments. Anyone can chime in. Should you track your milestones on your journey to full alignment? I'm gonna say yes, but how you track it is up to you, and you don't have to track all of them, but I think about how the Israelites were told to bring those stones, take a stone. Each tribe took a stone from the river and took it across as a memorial. So sometimes you need a reminder of how far along you've made it. So, what are your thoughts about tracking your milestones?
I'll answer that. I think it's important, and actually, recently, um, I've been doing some decluttering in the house and getting rid of a lot of things. And I ran across a journal, and when I first started to, journal, and so I sat down and I started to go through it, and it was in discipleship because that's when I started to, journal. So it's been a while, and I looked at some of my notes, and you're right. You look back, and I just said, wow, God, you are just so good. And it actually brought tears to my eyes, when I started to go through, and I had to stop myself. I'm like, I have to finish this work today. I have this task to do today. And I could have sat there and just gone through it. And so I think it's very important because sometimes, just because of life and what we do on a daily basis, we can forget what God has done. And so when you write these things down and you can go back and reflect on it, you just said, Lord, if it had not been for you on my side, I don't know where I would be. And look what you've done now. So I encourage you to jot it down. I think it's important to write down your journey. You might not have to do it every day, but write something down.
I'll
I
chime
think,
in. Oh,
oh,
go ahead.
I think one thing that is important, and I actually wrote down because the message translation, um, of this scripture says it so plainly. One of my favorite scriptures, it was on my graduation cap, it's engraved on my iPad, Jeremiah 29:11. I know what I am doing. I have it all planned out. Plans to take care of you, not abandon you, plans to give you the future you hope for. And while you are tracking where you've come from, don't get too ahead of yourself of where you're going. Don't, I definitely agree of tracking your milestones, but don't try to predict the next ones, because I've find taking it one step at a time, whether that is, one project, one milestone at a time, being patient with God and the journey that they have you on is so important, because if you try to predict your future milestones and try to map quest and get your direct, you will be messed up, and that will cause some hurt, and like you'll be frustrated with God and you'll be sad. Like, God, this is not the plan. No, it's not your plan. So I think that milestones are definitely important. But one of the things that I've learned as a planner, my planner right here underneath my computer as a planner, sometimes even going back to that surrendering process that we've talked about, tracking your milestones and admiring how far you've come is important, but also surrendering your future to God, because it's already worked out. Even everything that's going on right now, and that is crazy to say. I feel old and very mature to say that, but it I promise you it is. It's already worked out. So don't spend too much time predicting your future milestones as it is admiring how far you've come.
So I'll just speak to like millennials and the people like the post. I'm not a big post person, but I do like to take pictures and, track milestones, not necessarily through a journal, but through video and things of that nature. And there's value to that, because there are times when God is going to stretch you and challenge you and put you in positions where you may have felt like, I can't do that. I'm not qualified to do this specific thing that God may be asking you to do. But when you are tracking milestones or major moments in your life where you have felt like you overcame something, the next time God stretches you or gives you a challenge, you can use that as a reference. Like, I overcame before, God prepared me before, He'll do it again. And so that's what I'm learning to do. Even with my current role, I never thought in a million years I would be helping older adults, right? I've been working with youth since 2009, and I thought that was like my area of expertise. And God was like, okay, no, I want you to become an expert in something else. And so it took me looking at some of my milestones, and even like Ali said, working for local government, right? Every step that I've had, I look at it like, oh, I didn't think that I qualified to be here. But in it, God allowed me to grow and grow in Him, so that I was preparing myself for the next. And so that's what I see the value of milestones being.
That's good. And I would say too that preparation, you don't never know what that's going to look like. And so the preparation season is ongoing. We don't just graduate and that's it. You don't get a certification and that's it. It's continuous growth, and in order to be who God wants you to be, and in order to be the person you ultimately have been created to be, it takes growth and not stopping. So it really takes perseverance. One of the comments was, what happens when you are misaligned, if you are off track, or if you are, we all get off track. How did you get back on track? I know some of us are using our spiritual discipline, a prayer, maybe community. You have a trusted friend that you can confide in. What advice do you give those who have gone off track, or even for yourself, how did you get back on track?
One of the things that has helped me, I think this has been a big get back on track year for me. Um, I have allowed certain things, people to overstay their welcome and cloud my judgment. And I have watched God realign me on its own. I didn't even have to move. I just said, God, what's going on? Show me what I need to do. And when I asked God for that, God just moved. God just moved. I didn't do a thing. People and places and things just fell. And opening up space for clarity and stillness will help you to hear God. One of the things that has been keeping me calm and peaceful is that nobody shouts when they're right next to you. So don't expect God to be real loud. You got to get real quiet to hear God. And because God is right there with you. And I think that that has been something that has helped me to get back in alignment. It's just asking God, first of all, for forgiveness, to say, God, I've got lost up. Like I'm one of my favorite movies. The cool points are out the window, and you got me all twisted up in the game. What's going on, God? I need to get back on track. And asking God for that forgiveness and for help, you'll find that God will step in and do what needs to be done, as long as you then trust and are obedient to allow what has to happen to happen. And that is an uncomfortable shedding experience, but it is bringing me clarity as a person who is going through it right now, bringing me clarity to get closer to God and more aligned with what He has, and just getting back on track with where I'm supposed to be.
Thank you. Anna, Angel, how do you get back on track, or
Well,
suggest people get back on track?
I think it takes some courage. It takes some courage to get back on track, because most of us, whether we admit it or not, we're people pleasers. We're going to try to please somebody, and to get back on track, uh, you're going to have to walk away sometimes. But it also takes you being honest with yourself, because we can also lie to ourselves and tell ourselves all of this stuff, and we know we're wrong. We're off track. We're not in alignment, and so you have to have the you have to have courage, and you have to be honest. And I'm a believer, if you get so far off track and you're out of God's will, He's going to bring you back. He's going to bring you back, because His will is going to be done. It's going to be done.
So for me, like I said, I'm a planner, and sometimes I have to learn the hard way that I'm misaligned when the planning goes left, right? And similar to what Ali said, it gets quiet, and I feel like I don't hear from God anymore, or I feel like there's a distance. And of course, that conviction comes in, because God doesn't leave you. You know what I mean? You stepped away from Him. So what did I do that causes wedge between me and God? And the first thing I personally have to do is like rest. I have to stop. I got to turn my brain off, and I have to allow the space for, even in my prayer life, for there to be a two-way conversation, not just me always talking to God, but just being still enough for Him to speak to me and to re-guide me. And then going back to what I said earlier about community and being open and honest, like Elder Gray said, you have to, one, admit, that you have strayed. And then just getting back to your core, the core of your faith. God doesn't always work the same way, but there are some things that, you have developed in your relationship that will allow you to make your way back to Him. So
That's good. And we all have become misaligned and done different things to be off track, or life has happened. So sometimes it's not anything we've done, but situations and circumstances come our way. And again, that's where the journey is important. And whether we're looking back at our journals or pictures or photos or milestone moments that, uh, like Allie had the reminder of this restaurant, and it was where the last picture she took with her grandmother after she graduated. It's things like that, that even those things can trigger you to get back on track. Somebody sending you a text, a prayer, a check-in. So community is important to alignment. A community of faith, a community of like-minded people in your career field, community of people you can look up to and ask for advice. So we all need each other. And that's why, having you all on here, different perspectives, but we're all going in the same direction. It's just that God is moving us differently. And even when people drop off, like Allie said, doesn't mean you did anything. And it may be time for them to drop out of your life. You say, Lord, I need rest, I need peace, whatever your prayer was. And then everybody goes away and you're like, what happened? I thought they were my people. Well, He gave you the rest, the peace, all of the things you asked for. It's just not the way you thought it was going to be. And so sometimes when we're working through our alignment season, or getting in alignment or realignment, a lot of things are going to happen. And that's why our community is important, a safe space, a trusted space. So we thank you all. We have a couple more minutes. Anybody want to wrap up? Say a final last word or two of encouragement to our audience.
I just want to say, I appreciate listening to the stories of the other guests. Like, it was times I was really like nodding my head because I can relate, and I feel like this conversation can go for another 2 hours or so. But it was a pleasure, hearing how God uses other people to even minister to you while you're in service. So I'm grateful for this opportunity.
And again, I echo that. I am grateful for this opportunity. And I think my closing words would be, because I'm the oldest, I think, on here, is trust God through the good, the bad, the ugly. And that's my song every day. I trust God. It doesn't mean I like it. It doesn't mean I understand it. But you just have to trust God and know that He wants the best for us and that He has us. And so being in alignment with Him can only get you the best. It might not always feel good, but you still have to trust God through the process. And those are my closing words.
One of the things that um, I just want anybody who just needs encouragement to know, um, in Morning Star discipleship, you learn all the scriptures. And Romans 8:28, another one that I just wanted to share tonight, was that's why we can be sure that every detail in our lives of love for God is worked into something good. And I want anybody watching this, whether it's live or rewatching it, to know whatever you are going through. And I do mean whatever. If it feels good, if it feels bad, if it's tragic, if it's hard, whatever it is working together for your good. And that is Um, that's heavy, that is hard. Sometimes it's light, sometimes it feels good, but on dark days it can be heavy. But I just want you to know that it's all working together.
Thank you, ladies. I appreciate you coming on. I'm sure our guests and viewers were able to get something and something they can live off of for the future, and a right now word as well. So I thank you all for coming. And for those of you who would like to support the Renaissance Center, you can check us out at www.therenaissancecenter.org. You can always give us a call at 410-409-0025, and we will return your call and get back to you. But we thank you for joining us tonight, and we thank all our guests for their time this evening. Have a great night.